10 meters down, in the silent, green waters of the Bay of Naples, my glove closes on a T-handle. This is what we came for. With a twist, the corer bites into an ancient pier, a structure that has stood here, defiant against the waves, for 2,000 years. The tool's teeth grind against grit and shell, a low, guttural growl that echoes through 19 centuries of history, a sound that speaks of storms and empires. I feel the give. A chalky cylinder of stone breaks free, cool to the touch, slick with salt, and absolutely, fundamentally impossible. Because this piece of concrete is doing something that should not be happening. The longer it sits in the corrosive, punishing, relentless assault of the sea, the stronger it gets. Meanwhile, the billion-dollar bridges, the coastal highways, the reinforced seawalls that we build today, they start to show signs of decay in a few years and can begin to fail in just a few decades. So what ancient, forgotten secret is locked inside this humble piece of stone? What profound chemical understanding did the Romans possess that we, with all our modern science, have somehow forgotten? We're about to perform an autopsy on a 2,000-year-old miracle. And the findings from this single core could completely rewrite the story of how we build our world tomorrow. Stay with us. Back in the lab, this simple cylinder of rock becomes the center of the universe. It's no longer just a piece of a pier, it's a time capsule. The air is thick with anticipation as we prepare it for analysis. The diamond saw wakes up with a high-pitched, almost musical hiss, and as it slices into the concrete, an incredible thing happens. You can smell it, a faint, briny, unmistakable scent of ancient seawater, trapped in microscopic pores for millennia, finally sighing free like a ghost released from stone. The blade opens a clean, perfect seam, and we lean in close, the hum of the machine fading into the background. And there, on the freshly cut surface, we find exactly what we were hoping for, a crack. Now, you have to understand, in the world of modern concrete, a crack is a death sentence. It's the single greatest point of failure. It's an open invitation for water to invade, for the internal steel skeleton, the rebar, to start to rust and expand, and for the entire structure to tear itself apart from the inside out. A crack is the beginning of the end. But this crack, this is something else entirely. This should be a wound, a scar of damage, but it isn't. Its edges are meticulously stitched together with glittering, needle-bright crystals, binding old to new as if a microscopic repair crew has been awake and hard at work for centuries. This single, silent core testifies to a profound and revolutionary truth: this material wasn't engineered just to stand there and resist decay. It was engineered to age. To get better with time. It was designed to live and to heal. So how on earth did they do it? To understand this, you have to forget everything you think you know about concrete. Forget the perfectly uniform, gray bags you buy at the hardware store. The Romans had a name for their miracle mixture, opus cementitium. And its recipe was a work of regional genius, relying on 3 critical ingredients. First, you have the binder. Think of it like the flour in a cake, it's the bulk, the foundation, the stuff that holds everything together. The Romans started with limestone, a common and plentiful rock. They would cook it in kilns at blistering temperatures, around 900 degrees Celsius, in a process called calcination. This baked out the carbon dioxide and transformed the limestone into a highly reactive, unstable, and powerful substance, quicklime. This is the basic glue. Next, you need the aggregate. This is the chunky stuff, the filler. And here, the Romans were incredibly pragmatic. They used whatever was locally available. Broken bricks and tiles from other construction projects, volcanic rocks called tufa, chunks of porous pumice, anything to give the mixture body and bulk. This wasn't just about saving money, it was about using materials whose properties they understood intimately. But the third ingredient, that was the key. That was the game changer. That was the secret sauce. An activator. A very special, almost magical, type of volcanic ash the Romans called pozzolana. It's named after the town of Pozzuoli, which sits right here on the Bay of Naples. And Pozzuoli sits in the middle of one of the most volatile and dangerous volcanic regions on the planet, the Campi Flegrei, or the Phlegrean Fields. This isn't just a single volcano, it's a massive, slumbering supervolcano, a landscape the ancient Romans saw as the literal gateway to the underworld. This isn't just any ash. Tempered for eons in the Earth's fiery belly and then drenched in the mineral-rich brine of the sea, this ash is packed with unique compounds, especially silica and alumina, in a highly reactive, non-crystalline form. The Romans might not have had electron microscopes, but they knew, through centuries of trial and error, that this specific ash did something incredible when it met their lime. We know this because their engineers wrote it down.
Marcus Vitruvius Pollio, a military engineer who served under Julius Caesar and Augustus, compiled a monumental work called De Architectura, on architecture. It's one of the most important texts to survive from antiquity. And in it, he lays out the recipe with stunning clarity. He describes a type of powder, the pulvis puteolinus, that produces wonderful results. He says, when it is mixed with lime and rubble, it not only lends strength to buildings of other kinds, but even when piers of it are constructed in the sea, they set hard under water. Think about how revolutionary that is. A material that doesn't dissolve or weaken in water, but is actively cured by it. This technology allowed Rome to conquer the sea itself. And to understand why that was so important, you have to understand the Roman world. The empire was a vast network, and its lifeblood was the Mediterranean Sea. To feed the million-strong population of Rome, they needed to import enormous quantities of grain from Egypt and North Africa. The famed Kura Annoni, the grain dole, was the bedrock of social stability. That meant they needed massive, all-weather harbors capable of handling thousands of ships. They needed piers, breakwaters, and lighthouses that could withstand the fiercest storms. Before opus caementitium, harbor construction was a slow, expensive, and often temporary affair. After, they could build on an imperial scale, creating permanent infrastructure that became the engine of their entire civilization. A century after Vitruvius, this technology reaches its sublime peak. In the heart of Rome, the Emperor Hadrian commissions the Pantheon. It is a breathtaking structure, a testament to the gods and to the power of Roman engineering. And it is crowned by an unreinforced concrete dome that lifts to the sky, 43.3 meters, or 142 feet, across. At its apex, a 9-meter oculus opens to the heavens. It has no steel skeleton. No rebar. No internal support structure. And 2,000 years later, it is still the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. It stands, not in spite of time, but in perfect harmony with it. And all along the Tyrrhenian coast, Roman harbors, piers, and breakwaters still wear their collars of opus caementitium, their faces pitted and worn by the endless waves, but their core structures shockingly, stubbornly whole. How is this even possible? Well, here's where Roman engineering starts to feel less like construction and more like alchemy. Their method for building in the sea was completely counterintuitive and utterly brilliant. To build a pier or a breakwater, they would first construct enormous, hollow wooden boxes, called cofferdams. These were complex structures in their own right, often built from massive timbers and driven into the seabed. Then, instead of mixing a wet, sloppy concrete on shore and trying to pour it underwater, a logistical nightmare, they did something truly audacious. They packed these cofferdams with a carefully layered dry mixture of their quicklime and the magical pozzolana ash, interspersed with their chunky aggregate. Then came the moment of truth. They would dismantle a part of the cofferdam, or simply cut it open, intentionally and violently flooding the entire structure with seawater. Now, for any modern builder, this moment, the uncontrolled, corrosive torrent of saltwater rushing into your carefully placed mix, would be the ultimate failure. It's a catastrophe. You've ruined the batch. But for the Romans, this was not the failure point. This was the trigger. This was the moment their chemistry was designed to wake up. This was the beginning of creation. Instantly, a series of powerful chemical reactions begins. The seawater hits the quicklime and a violent, exothermic reaction kicks off, generating immense heat, so-called hot mixing. This heat boils away some of the seawater and forms calcium hydrates, which act as the initial glue, binding the aggregate together into a solid mass in a matter of hours. But that's just the start, the quick-set part of the process. The real Roman magic is a marathon, not a sprint. The salty, mineral-rich seawater is now trapped inside the concrete matrix, acting as a permanent internal catalyst. Over years, and then decades, and then centuries, this trapped water allows the calcium compounds from the lime to continue interacting with the silica and alumina in the volcanic ash. This is the legendary pozzolanic reaction. It's not just about getting hard, it's about a slow, profound transformation at the molecular level. It's like the initial hardening is just scaffolding, and the real structure is built slowly, patiently, over time. They were literally rearranging the molecules of the artificial stone. And when you put a slice of this ancient concrete under a scanning electron microscope, you can see the astonishing results of this 2,000-year-long chemical process. We see tiny, needle-like crystals of a rare and incredibly robust mineral called aluminous tobermorite. You almost never see this form in nature. These crystals are sprouting directly from the grains of volcanic ash, reaching across microscopic voids and cracks, interlocking like a dense felt, weaving the entire matrix into an ever denser, ever stronger artificial rock.
We also see blocky crystals of another mineral, philipsite, which adds even more strength. The material is actively growing, densifying, and improving itself. Now, here's the key. The compressive strength of this Roman concrete on day 28 would not impress a modern structural engineer. Our Portland cement-based concretes can get much harder, much faster. Our entire industry is built on the metric of 28-day strength. But our metrics are all about the short-term win. The Romans' creation utterly mocks our metrics with its incredible durability, its sheer refusal to die. Where our steel-reinforced concrete surrenders to the ocean's chloride ions, where its internal steel skeleton rusts, swells, and inevitably bursts the concrete open from within in a process called spalling, this ancient material just keeps knitting itself together. It uses the very thing that destroys our concrete, seawater, as its fuel for growth. It recruits the sea as an accomplice, not an enemy. And that wasn't their only trick. The Pantheon, standing far from the sea, tells us about another stroke of genius, the gradient mix. The Romans understood on an intuitive level something we often forget: you don't need the same monolithic strength everywhere in a structure. That's just wasteful and inefficient. So, for the Pantheon's massive dome, they custom-tuned the recipe as they built upwards, a feat of materials science that is simply breathtaking. At the heavy, thick base, the haunches of the dome that had to bear the most weight, they used a dense aggregate of brick and heavy travertine rock, creating a powerful, stable foundation. But as they went higher, as the dome curved towards the sky, they gradually and deliberately swapped that out for lighter and lighter material. The upper portions of the dome are made with porous tufa and, at the very crown around the oculus, feather-light pumice. Pumice is a volcanic rock so full of trapped air that it can actually float on water. And then, to reduce the load even further, they carved out those beautiful, deep coffers, which are not just decorative but are a brilliant structural innovation, removing every ounce of unnecessary mass where the load was lowest. There was no rebar. No epoxy. No hidden steel frame. Just a perfect, sublime pact between geometry and material. The shape and the stone worked together as one, sharing the load in an impossibly elegant solution. But for centuries, there was still a missing piece to this puzzle. We understood the pozzolanic reaction, but we couldn't fully explain the incredible self-healing we were seeing in the core samples. Recently, an interdisciplinary team of scientists from MIT, Harvard, and labs in Italy and Switzerland decided to re-examine these ancient samples with the most powerful analytical tools we now possess. And they found a new clue, a secret that had been hiding in plain sight all along. Scattered throughout the concrete matrix were these tiny, bright white, chalky chunks. Previous generations of researchers had dismissed them as signs of poor mixing or low-quality raw materials. But this new team looked closer and had a revolutionary insight: what if they weren't a mistake? What if they were a feature, not a bug? They called them lime clasts. They realized these clasts were the unmistakable fingerprint of the Romans using the hotter, more reactive form of lime, quicklime, in their mixture, confirming the hot mixing theory. And these little white chunks are essentially pockets of still highly reactive calcium. In effect, the Romans had embedded emergency first aid kits all through the concrete. Here's how this incredible mechanism works: 2,000 years pass. A tiny microcrack, maybe from a small earthquake, the stress of settling, or thermal expansion, begins to form and migrate through the concrete. As soon as that crack runs into one of these chalky lime clasts, the process begins. Water, which is always present in a marine environment and even in the air, wicks into the fine crack and touches the clast. The highly reactive clast instantly dissolves, releasing a concentrated, mobilized rush of calcium into the water. This calcium-rich solution then flows into the narrow confines of the crack, and in a matter of weeks, it recrystallizes, forming new calcium carbonate and other compounds that stitch the crack shut. A blind mason, left inside the concrete 2 millennia ago, wakes up and lays down fresh crystal, healing the wound permanently from the inside. When the scientists created replicas in their lab using the same ancient hot mixing technique, they witnessed the exact same behavior. They'd cast a beam of this Roman-style concrete, purposefully crack it, and then just drip water on it. And they watched, amazed, as this brilliant white scar of new material formed and completely sealed the damage within 2 weeks. It is, quite simply, a smart material that knows how to heal itself. Now, let's pull back and look at the stakes. What do we build with today? We build almost exclusively with Portland cement and steel. It's uniform. It's predictable. It gets very strong, very fast. It is the bedrock of the modern world. But Portland cement is a carbon furnace. To make it, you have to heat a kiln to over 1,450 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lava.
This process is so energy-intensive that its production accounts for a staggering 8% of all global CO2 emissions. That is more than the entire global aviation industry and global shipping combined. Every single bag is a small, gray exhalation from our planet. We build to win the race for early strength, getting our structures up and occupied in record time. But then we spend the next 50 to 100 years paying the astronomical price. We fight a constant, expensive, and ultimately losing war against the inevitable. You've seen it on every highway overpass, in every coastal city. Chlorides from road salts in winter or from salty air near the coast creep into the concrete. They find the steel rebar inside, the very skeleton we rely on for tensile strength, and they begin the corrosion process. Rusting steel can expand to over 4 times its original volume. This expansion creates immense internal pressure, causing the concrete to crack, flake, and spall off in huge, dangerous chunks. We spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year just trying to suture the wounds, to patch the rust, and to fight back against this built-in, planned obsolescence. It's a system designed for failure. The pattern, once you see it, is undeniable. The Romans engineered time itself into their material. They embraced lumpy, imperfect, heterogeneous mixes because they understood, or at least appreciated, the long-term chemical benefits. They encoded a chemistry that continues to work, to mature, to strengthen, decades and centuries after the last builder has gone home. They used the earth they had at hand, a unique volcanic ash with a passport stamped Campi Flegrei, to turn their greatest enemy, the sea, into their greatest accomplice. Try to imagine the mindset behind this. A profound fear of the sea's destructive power, yes. But also, a deep cultural hope for permanence, for a legacy that would last an eternity. And an innovation that was built on one radical, almost forgotten virtue in our modern world, patience. They were willing to let a building become itself across decades. They understood that durability isn't a single number you measure on a chart after 28 days. Durability is a living, breathing relationship between a substance, its environment, and the relentless passage of time. And the Romans made that relationship an active, regenerative, healing partnership. So where does that leave us? Standing on the precipice, with a world poured in Portland cement jackets around steel bones. A world of crumbling bridges, decaying ports, and failing seawalls facing rising seas. The maintenance ledgers just keep getting fatter. But that ancient fingerprint from the Bay of Naples points directly to the cure. The chemistry that keeps working always wins the long game. And the good news is, we are finally starting to listen. The lessons from this ancient core are echoing in materials science labs all over the world. Engineers are exploring a whole new generation of concretes. They're developing lower clinker cements, like LC3, which uses abundant calcined clays and limestone to slash the carbon footprint by up to 40% while improving durability. They are hunting for natural pozzolans and finding ways to use industrial waste products like fly ash from coal plants or silica fume as modern substitutes for that Roman volcanic ash. They're designing radical new binders like alkali-activated materials and geopolymers that create concrete with no Portland cement at all. They're even starting to build with non-corroding reinforcements, like rebar made from basalt rock fiber, literally volcanic rock spun into threads, or fiber-reinforced polymers, eliminating the problem of rust altogether. And yes, they are actively investigating hot mixing strategies and embedding tiny capsules of healing agents into new concrete mixes, trying to explicitly replicate that incredible self-healing function. The climate ledger tilts with every single one of these substitutions. More supplementary materials, less clinker. Site-specific mixes that are tuned to their local environment. These choices not only drastically cut the massive upfront carbon cost, they create structures that last longer, slashing the even bigger carbon cost of constant repair, demolition, and replacement, especially in our vital coastal zones that are on the front lines of climate change. I slide the ancient core back into its protective case. The healed crack inside shines like a thin, bright scar of time. It's a message in a bottle, a voice speaking to us across 2 millennia. If we learn to pour our future the way the Romans poured for the sea, with a chemistry designed to keep waking up, then our buildings can finally become wise, resilient elders, not chronic, expensive patients. The verdict is inescapable: the materials that refuse to be finished, the ones that embrace change and imperfection, are the ones that truly outlast. And in a century of rising seas, extreme weather, and shrinking carbon budgets, our very survival favors structures that learn to age into strength instead of sprinting headfirst into failure. The Romans left us a blueprint for resilience. Now, we have to find the wisdom, and the patience, to use it. We've just dissected the incredible story of Roman concrete,
but if you want to see another ancient engineering marvel that defies all explanation, click on the video on your screen now about the almost unbelievable construction of the Great Wall of China. And down in the comments, let me know your thoughts on this. What's one modern structure in your city or town that you genuinely wish was built to last forever? Let's talk about it. And finally, if you believe the past holds the keys to building a better, more sustainable future, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. We unearth another incredible story from the archives of humanity every single day. Thanks for being part of the investigation.